The kickflip is a rare lift that scores no technical points in the acrobatic gymnastics world, but it's moderately popular in artistic circles because it looks spectacular and doesn't require a lot of brute force. But although this lift looks easy, it's actually difficult for aesthetic couples to do properly. Let's dive in. Getting started, the good news is this is not an overhead lift. This means that the lift takes place at the height of the base's torso area. This is where he's most strong and thus has more control over the lift and the flyer's safety. The lift takes place closer to the ground, so there's less of a fear factor for the flyer. That's also the only good news. The bad news is that the flyer gets whipped around so hard that both the base and the flyer need to have extremely solid core strength. The flyer needs to be very flexible. It's harder if your flyer has relatively short legs. And the base also needs to have enough deltoid strength to actually do a one-armed overhead lift. It is therefore recommended that you train all these extensively before you attempt this lift. Once you're comfortable enough with each other and you're ready to train, have the flyer position herself slightly off-center to the base. The base should position himself on the side of the flyer's flexible leg. At this point, identify the base's support arm. This arm will support the flyer's entire weight. Hence, the deltoid needs to be strong enough to actually do an overhead lift. The control arm, the base will use this arm to help the flyer guide her through the air. Take the base's support arm and place the edge of the tricep where it meets the elbow upon the flyer's hip where it meets the waist. With this contact made, have the flyer initiate a tilting technique. Once the flyer's leg is high enough, grab the ankle of the flyer with your control arm. Once this contact has been made and the base puts pressure by slightly pulling the flyer's leg in place, the flyer should engage a full tilt technique. For those of you whom are not aware how tilting works, picture sitting in a box split on the floor. Now picture rotating that floor vertically so that your split is actually standing up. This is basically a full tilt. The ballet world hates this technique because it's basically cheating. Lucky for you, this technique is not a ballet lift, so tilting is allowed. Once the couple is in position, it's time to check off some boxes before you yank her across for dear life. The base's elbow must be digging into the flyer's hip bone and simultaneously be pressing against her waist. If the arm is not in contact with both these physical parameters, and you're basically just holding onto her leg or her waist only, you will be off balance during the lift and you will either fail or hurt someone. The hand of the supporting arm needs to be wrapped all the way around towards her hamstring. You need to be holding the entire leg. Your flyer's flexible leg must be directly pointing towards the ceiling and not slanted to the front. If you are slanted to the front, the lift is still possible, but it's going to cause a lot more discomfort as well as be a lot more work for the base's back. The base's control hand needs to reach all the way overhead with his fingers facing away from himself and his thumb be pointing downwards. If all these checkboxes are in place, it's time to do the lift. For the base, this technique can be tricky because he needs to do everything in circles. When the lift begins, he needs to use his obliques to pivot his body in a 45-degree circle from one side to the other. The control arm should first pull up slightly before pulling away and finally directing downward past the vertical line, always working circular and not in straight lines. It is also very important to keep pressing on this control arm since the flyer will be pushing against this arm with all her might in order to successfully complete the rotation. Finally, the support arm makes the smallest circle. He has to raise his elbow in a rising circle around his shoulder till the elbow is positioned above the shoulder in height. During this time, it's absolutely crucial to have enough pressure that he remains in contact with the flyer's hip to really support her in the air. If all this goes in perfect unison, the descent of the lift will begin. This is basically just a catch where the control arm releases, not the support arm. Stay in contact with the support arm, and then reposition the control arm to catch the flyer. Dismount as you see fit. We use a back walkover. For the flyer, the first thing you have to understand is that the flyer is blind during this lift. It's in our instincts as human beings to look where we are going, and you have to fight this really to do the opposite if you want to be the flyer in this lift. To illustrate this, we put a GoPro on Viva. our flyer's head. And here you can see what happens. Aside from the fact that the GoPro nearly flew off her head and she grabbed the camera to save it, you can still see that once the lift starts, she cannot see anything until the last moment where she dismounts. Because she chooses to dismount in a back walkover, the minute she sees the floor, she knows that that's her cue to put her hands down. Put your body in a full tilting position. Wait for the base to put some pressure so you know he's ready. As soon as you feel your standing leg get yanked off the floor, you need to do a quarter twist towards the base while simultaneously pressing in the opposite direction with your flexible leg. The basic idea is to turn your back towards the direction that your body is traveling, away from line of sight. Keep your control leg and your body as linear as you can by pressing in the opposite direction that your flexible leg is being pulled. Once your head is almost at the peak, which you need to feel because you cannot see, you need to help your base by launching yourself backwards and falling towards the floor. This energy is critical to getting enough momentum to finishing the lift. It is also the scariest moment for the flyer. If you find you're getting into the lift, but you're not getting overhead enough to drop, but your base is still standing, then the problem is most likely that the timing of your throw is not in sync with the base. If you look clearly here at our footage, you can see where Viva throws herself backwards by arching her back in order to get into the position so she can do the dismount. And that is our kickflip tutorial. Before attempting this tutorial, do understand this is not a beginner's lift. It requires a lot of experience between two people, and I only recommend doing this lift if you have a lot of experience with your current partner, or if you've done this lift many times before and you're teaching someone to do it. If there is a tutorial you would like to see, please send us a comment and we'll get right on it. If you have any other questions, please drop us a comment and we'll answer you as soon as we can. Also, please consider subscribing. It helps us out a lot, and we'll see you next time.
So, hi, I'm John from Cirque-it.
And I am Viva, and I'm the world champion.
And then I'll make a